and welcome to another installment of Terps Talk. I'm your host, Branden Roth. We've got a few things on the docket for the Terps this week. Obviously, probably the biggest announcement or news, whatever you want to call it, that happened recently was this morning. Dwayne Morgan had his commitment ceremony, and as most of you probably know by now, he picked UNLV. Obviously, this is a little bit of a disappointment for Terps fans, but it was not to be unexpected. I mean, most blogs associated with Terrapins, most recruiting sites, all had Dwayne Morgan going to UNLV. I think Terps fans had kind of gotten a chance to come to terms with that. But I don't, I mean, obviously, I was important to get this kid. He's a great player out of Baltimore. He's a five-star and a possible McDonald's All-American type of player. But for Maryland, I don't think this was a world-breaking loss. I don't think this cuts any lines to Baltimore or anything like that. There's been a lot of rumors coming out about Dwayne this morning and this afternoon. A lot of people have said that him and Daquan Cook, who went to UNLV last year, were kind of a package deal. They had the same handler, so there's been some connections drawn there. But overall, I think it was more of just the fact that UNLV was the first guy on this kid before he really blew up, and I think he appreciated that. Obviously, Maryland had been in on him really hard and were even considered favorites for him at one point in time. But even Morgan said that lately they've kind of backed off of him, and I think a lot of that is mostly because they realized where he was going. They realized that he was going to UNLV. They realized that it wasn't worth their time to invest to keep hard on this kid, that someone that they weren't getting. So it's a great get for UNLV, obviously. Best of luck to Dwayne. I hope he has a good career out there. But I would like to see him at Maryland. I mean, obviously, you have to think about playing time. How big of a factor was that? I mean, we've already got Dez, who plays 3 or 2. We've got Jake, who plays 3 mostly. So I don't know how much playing time he would have gotten. I don't know how. I've seen him play a couple times, and honestly, I prefer Jake Layman's game to his. I think Morgan is a kid who is going to go to college and grow a lot. His game might not be perfectly refined right now, but I think it will get a lot better. So we'll see. I mean, right now the verdict is out, but in 2 years we'll know. I mean, we'll know how good Morgan is compared to Jake Layman, and if we made the right decision. But only time will tell. So you have to talk about that a little bit. Obviously, it's the biggest thing that's happened to the Terps today. In recent news, obviously the Terps beat Alabama on Tuesday, and that was outside of the Duke win in the ACC tournament. It was probably Maryland's second biggest win. Can be debated just because they had so much trouble on the road this year. It was a really big game for them. That I was really nervous. I fully expected the Terps to fold at the end and blow the game, but they didn't, and it's something they have done a lot this year. So who knows? You have to think maybe they're growing up a little bit. They finally were able to close out a game. They finally were able to get over that hump of beating a good team on the road. So we're looking at a couple of guys. We're looking at a couple of guys who really stepped up in that game. Obviously, Jake Layman was one. Hit a couple really big threes for Maryland, especially in time of need when Alex Len was on the bench with foul trouble. So you look at another guy, Alex Len, obviously stepped up big in that game. It seems like these times when he's able to go back to the basket against another 7-foot guy, and they keep him only in one-on-one coverage, they're really able to. He's able to do a lot better. I mean, it's hard to tell how good a guy is when he's constantly being double teamed all the time, especially a guy who hasn't been playing basketball for the longest amount of time, doesn't exactly know how to handle that pressure. I mean, obviously it's something he's going to have to learn. He's never been the greatest guy at finding the open man on a double team, so those are things that will come with age. I mean, obviously you'd love to see Alex stay another year, although that may be unlikely. Those are things that he would learn staying another year, is how to find that open man off a double team. So another guy, obviously Dez had a good game. He's been carrying the team lately, and I'm so excited to see what Dez does next year. Obviously, he's going to be one of the best returning players in the ACC, And the sky's the limit for that kid. I mean, the better his jump shot get, the better his game is going to get. I mean, he's obviously great going to the rim, and if he can get a better, I mean, his jump shot has gotten better from the beginning of the season, and if it continues to do so, he's going to be a terror in the ACC next year, and he could be in the running for ACC Player of the Year, depending on who stays and who goes in the NBA draft this year. So, um, even with Alex Len going, the way the Terps have been playing lately has to be encouraging. I mean, they didn't have one of their better scorers last night, Seth Allen. He broke his hand a couple days beforehand, so that was definitely something a lot of Terps fans were worried about. But obviously, I mean, we missed his scoring a little bit, but I think the Terps stepped up and rallied around him and were able to do well. I mean, I was really surprised at how well Maryland played at points in the game. They were up by 8 and 10 points late in the game. They obviously gave up a late run to Bama, and Bama's a great team at home. They've had 12 straight wins at home, so you're looking at a team who doesn't lose at home very often. I mean, they've beaten some good teams this year. They've beaten Tennessee and Kentucky, so they're not a pushover. They're definitely a solid team. They were a 1 seed in the NIT, so um, definitely one of Maryland's biggest wins of the year. So going off of that, we obviously still have some NIT games left to be played. I'm definitely encouraged by their NIT performance thus far. I was talking to a couple people at work today about the game, and a lot of them were saying how they would prefer that Maryland made the tournament and win a game or lose in the first round or maybe make the second round than to making a deep run in the NIT. But I mean, in my opinion, the goal of any season is to win titles, whether it be the ACC title, whether it be the ACC tournament, or whether it be the NCAA tournament. So, um, I don't know if getting one game in the tournament, or maybe two if we're lucky, really does that much for the team's prospects of winning one of those titles next year. I feel like a deep run in the NIT really helps this team get a semblance of what it's going to have to do in an ACC title, an ACC tournament, and the NCAA tournament, and just in a tough regular season schedule against the ACC. So they're definitely going to have to beat quality teams night in, night out, and Maryland's starting to prove that they can do that. So I think a deep run in the NIT honestly benefits them more than a short run in the NCAA's would have. I mean, of course, everyone would have liked to have seen Maryland make the NCAA tournament, but I really think that if Maryland can, they've obviously made the Final Four in the NIT. If they can go on and win the NIT, I mean, that does wonders for the team's confidence next year. I mean, they know that they can play in a tournament-style atmosphere. They can play at the biggest level. Madison Square Garden is one of the biggest stages you can play on in basketball. So you look at these games, and they're not going to be easy games. Obviously, I mean, they're going to have to play the winner of Iowa and Virginia, which is going on right now. And if they would win that game, they'd have to play. I mean, there's four toss-up teams. You have Baylor and Providence who are playing, and you have BYU and Southern Miss that are playing. I mean, any of those four teams are going to be a more than formidable opponent for Maryland. They've definitely lost to teams that aren't as good as those teams over the course of this year. So I think the one game everyone is hoping that will happen is the Maryland UVA game. I mean, obviously that would be big for the DMV. Everyone wants to see that game. Maryland's lost to them twice. I'm sure the Terps want a chance at revenge, want a chance to go back to and play Virginia and prove that they can beat them. They've had both games this year they could have won, especially that second game where they were up by 14 and a half and ended up losing the game. So I'm sure Maryland wants a chance to go back in there and prove to Virginia that they can beat them. The score right now is actually Virginia's winning by 37-35. So looks like that's going to probably end up being another game. It's down to the wire, like a lot of these games in the IT, especially with the bigger Division I schools have been. So I hope Maryland can play Virginia. I'd love to see that game again. That would be really awesome for the local prospects to be able to get a chance to see that game one more time. And I mean, honestly, out of any of the teams I've seen play, I mean, Maryland and Virginia are probably the two best. And right now, I think Maryland is the best. I mean, they've been playing really good. They've been playing more as a team than they have all season. They've got, in my opinion, they've got the two best players in the tournament, most likely. I mean, if someone else can name a better player in the IT right now than Des Wells, then prove me wrong. But Dez is by far and away the best player in the NIT right now, in my opinion. And I think Alex Len has to strongly be considered the second best player in the tournament right now. I mean, there's a couple, maybe Joe Harris for UVA. I guess you might say he's been better than Alex Len this entire year, but that's really about the only guy that jumps out at me that you're saying, man, he's better than Alex Len. Baylor's got a couple of good guys too that are highly thought of, but still, I don't think have performed as well as Alex Len has in some of the biggest stages against some of the biggest players. I mean, although he's been nowhere to be seen in some other games against no-name players, but I think Alex Len is probably, thinking Joe Harris is probably second, Alex Len's third, but we've got two of the three best players left in the NIT, and anytime that's true, you've got a good chance to win the whole thing. So. Um, let's move forward a little bit from the NIT. Obviously, we all hope the Terps can win. We'll see what they can do against the winner of Iowa and Virginia on Saturday. So keep rooting for the Terps. Obviously, you got the NCAA tournament, so I don't know how many of you will be watching, but I know I will. So let's move on to someone who actually is in the NCAA tournament, the Lady Terps. They came off of a wrecking of Michigan State the other night. Alyssa Thomas came out and played huge for the Terps, as always. I mean, Alyssa Thomas has been by far and away our best player in the last year or two. So you look for that to continue, and obviously with a matchup against UConn now, she's going to have to play out of her mind to win that game. You have to think if Maryland would have had Mincy, would have had Mosley, would have had some of the other people that are injured, as is Townsend, they really would have stood a lot better chance against UConn. I mean, it probably would have been a higher seed and wouldn't even had to play UConn. I mean, you talk about especially Mincy and Mosley being there. That's two starters, and Mincy might be the second best player on the team when she's healthy. So look at losing those players, and Maryland just does not match up well with UConn. Obviously, I still think Alyssa Thomas is the best player on the court. Oh, excuse me. Alyssa Thomas is still the best player on the court, but I don't think she has enough help around her right now to really take down a squad the quality of UConn. I mean, you never know. Alyssa could go out and score 40 and just carry her team to a victory. I mean, UConn's not the world-beating UConn they have been in years past, but I still think it's going to be a tough task for Maryland to get that job done. So we'll see. They play. I think they play Friday at 2, I think, against UConn on ESPN. So that should be a good game. I know people don't necessarily like to watch women's basketball as much, but it's definitely a game that I would tune into. I'd like to see what they can do. I'd like to see them make a little bit deeper run into the tournament and maybe make a Final Four. That would be cool. But we'll see what happens there. The last thing I want to touch on today is a quick football recruit. Recently, a Stanford commit, Devin Williams out of St. John's in D.C. He had his offer rescinded by St. John's, and I've covered this kid extensively. I've covered him at St. John's in multiple games, and I've always been really impressed with his game. I think Stanford originally recruited him as a linebacker. He got an offer as a freshman or a sophomore, and accepted it. He had the offer for 2 years, and I think the biggest thing in them rescinding that offer is when he was a sophomore, he obviously wasn't full grown. They were thinking he was going to fill out and be more of a linebacker. He has grown, and he's got, absolutely great work ethic in the weight room, but he hasn't grown as tall and hasn't gotten the wingspan that I thought that they hoped he would get. So I think Devin's probably going to have to play more of a safety role in college, maybe more like a Matt Robinson, a hard-hitting safety that comes up and helps in the run game. So I think that probably led Stanford to think twice about their offer. Obviously, I think there's other places he fits in perfect, like a Maryland. I think he would fit in great in our system at safety. We've had multiple guys like Kenny Tate, like Matt Robinson, who can play in that strong safety position, come up and help in the run. He's definitely smart enough to do it. He's a really, really smart kid. He's almost a 4.0 every semester. He's definitely got the work ethic. I mean, he's in the weight room 24/7. He's the captain of his team, has been for a year or two now. He's one of these low-key kids you know is not going to get in trouble, not going to do anything to stir up the dust. He's just going to come in, he's going to work hard, and he's going to get other guys to do better by example. So Definitely a kid I would like to see at Maryland. I know Maryland has got back on his recruitment since he has had his scholarship offer from Stanford rescinded. I would expect other teams in the area, especially or like a Virginia, some teams like that, Virginia Tech maybe even, to get back in recruitment with him. It had been thought for so long that he was a Stanford lock that I think a lot of teams have kind of forgotten about him, but he will definitely jump back out in the eyes of recruiters this year. Now seeing that he doesn't have that solid offer, so I think Maryland's a team that can definitely go in there and scoop that kid up. He wants academics. He wants a good football program, and I think those are two things that Maryland can give him. I think those are two things. Obviously, Stanford is a little better at than Maryland is, but um, not so much so to where he's still not going to get a great education at Maryland and still be able to play a high level D1 college football. And I think he would be a great fit for the Terps. So we'll see what happens there. He's definitely the type of player that Randy Edsall likes. He's a high football IQ guy, definitely a hard worker. So and he's got a lot of talent. So we'll stop there. Not a terrible amount to talk about this week, but hopefully we'll get some more. We got some football camps coming up in a couple weeks, so we'll touch base on those. I appreciate everyone for tuning in tonight. We're going to cut it a little short. I'll give you a quick update. Iowa's back up 42-41, so it looks like this game's going to come down to the wire. Still yet to be seen whether the Terps will play Iowa or Virginia on Saturday. It's hard to find myself rooting for Virginia, but I really do want to see that matchup with the Terps again. So we'll see coming next week. I'm sure we'll talk about that game. So I appreciate for everyone for tuning in. Have a good night, and I will see you next week.